Good morning. Welcome to the 9th annual WISEdata Conference. This is the first session of the day. It's called WISE for Principals and District Administrators. Hopefully you're in the right room. My name is Jeff Perry. I'm on the DPI Customer Services team, and I will guide you through this session this morning. Assuming the technology works, fingers are crossed in that area. It's not working at the moment. There we go. Because I jinxed myself, right? Today we're going to talk about WISEdata at a high level and talk about some of the responsibilities of administrators as related to WISEdata. We're going to look at some of the tools, the WISE tools that are available to you as administrators, and at the end, hopefully answer your questions. So what is WISEdata? Well, here's the official definition I pulled from the website. A multi-vendor open data collection system that allows school districts, charter schools, and choice schools to submit data to DPI from their student information system vendor. There you go. That's it. Data can also be sent from some third-party vendors, as many of you are probably aware. WISEdata receives all kinds of different data from LEAs. Some of those are noted there on the slide. Public districts and independent charter schools send more information than choice schools. WISEdata also links with WISEID, which we will talk about a little bit. Here's a graphic that they came up with to sort of give you an idea of the data submission process. And you may have seen this in other sessions in the past. It all starts at your LEA in your student information system, where you enter your data locally, and your system pushes that data then to WISEdata. It lands initially in a repository database. And when a validation is run, either by you as the LEA manually or automatically every evening, that data is then brought into WISEdata portal, where it's run against business rules and what we call the validation process to make sure that it is sent in the way that it was meant to be sent. And then the data ultimately ends up in the WISE database. That is its final resting place where snapshots are taken. And we'll talk about what that means in a little while. And there is also a public version of WISE for viewing by the general public. So why do we collect data in the first place? Well, obviously, we have federal and state requirements that need to be met, right? So that's a huge reason why. But there are other reasons also. Funding can sometimes be tied to the data that we collect in WISEdata. But also we can monitor student progress. We can use the tools that we'll talk about that are connected to WISEdata to analyze data. Maybe there are additional services that are needed that we can find from that analysis. There are trends that we can monitor, things like that. And also there is education research that can be done with the data from WISEdata. There are a whole bunch of software applications that DPI has developed that interact with WISEdata or are related to WISEdata. This is an example of the WISE home screen, which we'll talk about in a little while as well, which is kind of like your menu into the world of WISE. That's a little example of what that looks like. Before we can get working in WISEdata, we have to have access to the applications. And we do that by the administrator setting it up in many cases. And we're going to talk about that in a lot of detail, but here's a little high level slide that kind of describes that. Before a user can access the WISE applications, they need to obtain what is called a WAMS ID. And WAMS IDs are used by many different state agencies, the Department of Revenue, Department of Transportation, Department of Natural Resources. They all use them for different purposes. But what we use the WAMS ID for at DPI is to allow you, the user, to have one username and password that you can use to log into all the different WISE apps. That way you don't have a different set of credentials for each app, which would be, quite frankly, a nightmare. So we have the one ID that's good for everything, and we call that a WAMS ID. We also have the ability, if you are an agency that uses the Google Enterprise accounts, you can use Google to log into the WISE applications. I'm going to tell you a little secret. This is just between you and I. When a user logs in for the first time, I suggest that they use the WAMS ID for their first login. because if you log in using Google for the first time, you are then only able to use Google from that point on. But if you log in for the first time using WAMS, you can use WAMS or Google interchangeably for all your subsequent logins. I am told this is a feature and not a bug. I don't understand it fully myself, but I always put out that bit of information because if something happens to that Google ID and you're locked out of Google, then you're locked out of WISE. So that's my little tip for WISE versus Google, WAMS versus Google. I'm going to take a sip of my beverage. Feel free to take a sip of your beverage as well. I'm sorry, what was the question? Oh, the question is, how can you change that if you've already logged in for Google for the first time? You can't. You're kind of stuck. What you could do is you could set up a brand new WAMS ID using an email address that's different from your Google account. And then you could get around it that way, but you'd have to set up all of your user roles and things again. But you could get around it that way. We have a WISE Home menu that we'll look at in a little while. That is a menu that allows you to quickly get into all the different WISE applications that you have a user role assigned for. Users, personnel, staff may come up to you as an administrator and say, I want access to WISE ID. I want access to WISE Data Portal. We're going to talk about that, how you can help them out with that in that request a user role feature. And there are different user roles within each application. So sometimes it's important to know which user role to assign a user. And WISE Secure is the application that's used to assign access to the DPI apps. To successfully conduct your WISE data reporting, you're going to need personnel that are assigned to these applications. These are WISE ID. That is how you create and update the unique identifier that's associated with each student and each staff member. WISE Data Portal, where you view the data that your SIS has sent into WISE Data and also view the errors and warnings that are associated with the data, if there are any. School Directory. This is our database, our sort of master database for all of the agencies. It includes contact information, low and high grade information, all kinds of stuff in School Directory. For public districts, you have WISE Dash for districts, which is a whole bunch of data dashboard tools that can be very helpful, not only in verifying data, but in all that analysis and stuff that I mentioned before. WISE Admin Portal, we're going to talk about in detail. That is an app that's more or less created specifically for administrators. And we have EdFi Credential, which is used if you need to make changes to the subscription for one of your vendor products. And this is the little graphic that shows the logos for each, which are really not all that different from one another, but now you've seen them all. There are some other tools that are related peripherally to WISE data, but not necessarily directly associated with the WISE data collection. WISE Staff, which is what public districts and some other agencies use to report their staff information. Choice schools don't do that. There is an application called SAFE, which is a secure file viewing and downloading application that is used for a variety of purposes, but one of them that's most important is when the DPI, Office of Educational Accountability, releases the preliminary report card data, that information is located in SAFE. We have the WISE Grants tool, which is used primarily for federal grant purposes. There are a whole bunch of special education applications that are related to special ed reporting. And there is also WISE Data Finance. We built this system with flexibility because we know that there are different styles of administration. But at the top level is always the district administrator or the choice administrator responsible for signing off on data privacy. And this is done by completing the district administrator authorization form, which is linked in the second bullet there. And we're going to look at that form in a little while. So basically, the the district administrator or the choice administrator completes that form indicating that they're going to adhere to data privacy regulations and that sort of thing. Once that is done, there are some administrators, they want to be hands-on and they want to control everything, right? And if that wants to be done, you can do that. Some people like to delegate those tasks out to other people. That can be done as well. Or you can kind of do a little combination of both, depending on what your style is. In the WISE Secure tool, then, we can manage security. We assign users access to the various applications that we talked about. There's also a pending access queue that you can take advantage of if you'd like to, where you can manage requests that your personnel have made for access to the various applications. And you can offboard users. If somebody moves on to a different role or leaves your organization, you can remove all of their user roles at once without having to go in and do each one individually. We also have an email domain restriction that's optional for you to take advantage of. It's just an extra security feature built into WISE Secure where you can put in different email domains and make sure that people that are making requests for access are using only those domains. And there is an access viewer tool, which is basically a reporting tool that shows you which of your personnel have access to what user roles, and that could be used for an audit if you wanted to audit who has access to the different WISE tools. Now we're going to look at some of the stuff firsthand. So the WISE Home information page is a great one to have bookmarked. By the way, the slide deck will be already is available on the DPI website. So, and you can click on all of these links right from the slide deck. So this page is great to have bookmarked because, number one, it has the link to WISE Home right here, which you're going to need anytime you log into any of the WISE apps. But it also has all kinds of documentation, including videos and things that might be helpful when you're using the tools. So it's a great one to have bookmarked. This is the part where it gets a little tricky, technology-wise. Here's that district administrator authorization form that I was talking about. Come on, there it goes. All right. So it's a little clunky. This is a very old software. They are in the process of updating this, which is good news, but I don't know exactly when that's going to happen. But when you click on new request, you'll need to put in your WAMS ID and password, which I will do here. Hopefully your password is not like mine, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a joke. And the form looks like this. So the fields that have the red asterisk by them are the ones that you need to fill in. Some good news is that the form should pull in the information from WAMS that it can pull in. Some of the things you'll have to fill in yourself. This is that data privacy piece that I mentioned that's very important to sign off on. And then you save the form at the bottom and it comes to our customer services team, and then we will process that for you. I also wanted to quickly show you the UAT version, the test version of our WISE Secure tool. And my fingers are again crossed that the technology will work here. Hey, there it is. This is an example of what the WISE Home menu looks like. This is our test environment. This is all pretend data. You can see I'm Testy McTesterton. So this is an example of a very long WISE Home menu that has access to a lot of stuff. Your menu may not look exactly like this, but it would be very similar. And we're going to go into WISE Secure. And that might take a moment to come up because the test version is kind of slow. I'll repeat that again. That might take a moment to come up because the test version is very slow. There it goes. So this is the landing page of WISE Secure. The pending access queue that I mentioned that you can work is located here. And when you click on that, you will see the different people who have requested a user role, their email address, and the application that they have requested. You can review that by clicking over here. You can either approve that request or reject it. If you you can leave a comment in there if you'd like to, and I can save the changes. I'm saying, well, this is a test version, so there might be something wrong behind the scenes, but you get the idea. The managed security screen is used frequently as well to add or remove user roles, and you can do this by clicking on the name of the application. So WISEadmin Portal, for example, if you click the assign user, you can look up the person by their email address and name. This is where I mentioned that there may be multiple roles associated with each application. So you want to make sure that you assign the person the role that they're supposed to have. And when you hit the add and close button, that role will be assigned to them. Now, I think I have to start this all over again. I apologize for that. In my practice session, I couldn't figure out how to get it back to the right slide. So there we go. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about just the WISEdata timeline, just briefly, so that you get a high-level picture of how things operate throughout the year. The DPI school year, quote unquote DPI school year, begins July 1st and ends June 30th. We have to pick a time for databases and things to be able to close out one school year and begin the next. So we picked July 1st as the first day and June 30th as the last day. We have what we call an August deadline. This is not a snapshot, and this is not an official deadline. That's why it's in quotation marks. But what we suggest is that beginning in mid to late August, you start to wrap up the year-end data from the prior school year. And the reason we suggest that is because once the new school year starts, things get really crazy, right? And so it might be easier to have the year-end stuff wrapped up before the new year stuff begins. And so that's why we have that sort of deadline built in there. But it's not anything required or official, but we just put that piece of advice out there. When the deadline, when you're doing those deadline tasks, school directory updates are important to get into place. And you can do that really at any point over the summer. And this includes maybe some changes to the low and high grade range of a school. There are school openings and closings sometimes within a district. There's kindergarten info that might need to be completed each year. There's contact information that changes, things like that can be put in the school directory, before the school year even begins. Also, you can check your data flow from your student information system and any third-party vendors you may have to make sure that things are working correctly. You might need to work with your vendor on that just to make sure that before the school year begins, that everything is flowing the way it should. Then when the school year begins, we have our third Friday of September count and our October 1st count, which are important. And then we have the big December snapshot. One thing that's great about WISEdata, and this doesn't work obviously with membership and some other things, but for WISEdata, the third Friday of September and October 1 counts don't have to be exact on the count date because we don't snapshot that data until December. So you do have some wiggle room in there to make sure that your errors and warnings and things are fixed and those counts are correct so that when we get to the December snapshot, the totals are correct. That doesn't work, like I said, with some other things like membership, but it works great with WISEdata. The December snapshot is the biggie. That's where we capture not only the current school year's counts of third Friday in September and October 1st, but the prior school year's year-end data like attendance and roster and coursework and CTE and all kinds of other things, graduates and all of that. So the December snapshot is huge, and that's why we put a lot of effort into data quality leading up to the snapshot to make sure that everybody has the tools they need to get the data in as great a shape as it can be before the snapshot. And over on the right side of the slide, we have linked the WISEdata annual task checklist, which can be a really great tool for the people at your LEA that are working on the snapshot to be able to go through and make sure that, that all the tasks are being completed that need to be. In the January timeframe every year, we flip the school directory to the next school year. We have to do that a little early because particularly grant work, but some of the more finance heavy applications need to begin working in the next school year long before the current school year has ended. So we flip the school directory school year in January-ish timeframe usually. Around May, most years, we have a spring demographic snapshot. This is a much smaller in scale snapshot, and it primarily concentrates on demographic information, and it's used in correlation with assessments primarily. Then the school year ends, and we have the June 30th last day of the DPI school year. And so that is a high-level overview of the WISEdata timeline. Reviewing the WISEdata process, your student information system and maybe some third-party vendors as well submit their data to WISEdata. The data lands in a repository database after it has been checked for L1 errors. What is an L1 error, Jeff? This is an error. It stops the data from coming in if there's a real fundamental problem with the data. For example, if there is a date format that needs to be in day, month, year, and it has been sent in year, month, day, it's going to fail the L1 check. So it's just a very big, and what I always advise is that if you're not troubleshooting a specific issue, don't spend too much time worrying about L1 errors because they'll drive you crazy. They're very technical in nature. A lot of times you need help from DPI and or your information system when you're troubleshooting an L1 error. And if you're not experiencing a data problem, it's probably best to just not worry about the L1 errors. From there, from that repository database, the data is goes through what we call a validation. It's brought into WISEdata portal and it's run against the various business rules. And this is how errors and warnings are generated if that is warranted with the data. And then if there are no critical errors associated with the data, every night WISEdata updates WISE dash, and that information is put in the WISE dash database, and it is from the WISE dash database that the snapshots are taken. We're going to look a little bit at the new school directory. It is pretty nice. If you were familiar with the old version of this app, it had been created, I think, in the early 2000s. It was very old. It was kind of clunky. It was pretty state of the art back then, but 20 years later, it wasn't the greatest. So we had some teams at DPI that worked to make it modern. And it's really nice. So if you have the opportunity to play around on there, I highly recommend that you do that. It's really nice and it's public facing. So if you see something on there that isn't right, you know that it needs to be fixed, right? So that's another reason to go in there and look at things. We don't have a whole lot of time to go through the whole thing now, but I wanted to make sure you knew where it was and that you knew what it looked like. There is a new admin version of this tool too that was just released. That's pretty awesome. Come on, help me. There. Now I gotta do this again, sorry. There's probably a way to do that, but I don't know what it is. So like I said, there's a new version of the admin application that was just released. It's really slick. Again, if you've used the old version, you know how clunky it was, and this is really, really nice. So I highly recommend that you check that out. If you have, contact information to update, low, high grade school information, kindergarten info, that kind of thing, school directory app is what you need to do that in. And the user guides for the new app are linked there on the slide as well. Let's talk about WISE Admin Portal. This is a tool that is designed for administrators, and it gives district and choice administrators kind of a one-stop shop, a centralized location where you can kind of review and look at all of the different WISE-related tasks that you would need to complete, particularly when you're leading up to a snapshot. Things like your district or school acknowledgements, your agency contacts, key performance indicators, and things like that. It is also used by some non-administrative users for doing something called a data errata letter, which we will talk about. And also the beginning with the school year we're in now, the district library plan information is now collected through WISEadmin portal as well. The landing screen looks like this, and each tile can be clicked on to take you to that area of the app. And the features of the app are noted there. I'm not going to read the slide, but one of the highlights I haven't talked about before is if your district uses local assessment data from MAP or PALS, you can or you want to take advantage of the immunization data collected through DHS, you can initiate those data sharing agreements from WISEadmin portal. And in the case of MAP and PALS, you will see that data then in WISE- for districts. The other local assessment vendor I'll talk about that in another slide. Hold on a second. We also, I'm getting ahead of myself. We also communicate cyber incidents through this tool. And here is what the administrator acknowledgement page looks like. In the WISEdata portal tool, someone is required to go in there and make an acknowledgement of the snapshot data and make sure that the district or the choice school is aware of the data, that needs to be collected in the snapshot. And that can be reviewed from WISEadmin portal. Public districts and independent charter schools will see more on the screen than choice schools will because choice schools don't have to send in as much data. We also have a link to the WISE events calendar directly from the WISEadmin portal tool. This calendar is great to bookmark. It talks about everything WISE related that is coming up on the calendar. Our weekly or bi-weekly, depending on the time of the year, user group calls, vendor trainings that your vendor may be having related to WISE, this conference that we're at right now, all kinds of different important events are noted on the WISE events calendar. Great thing to have bookmarked or to access right from the WISEadmin portal. There are also key performance indicators that public districts can use to jump right to the WISE- for District app and look at high-level data to see if the data that has been submitted through WISE, leading up to a snapshot is looking the way that you think it should look. The reason I say it's only for public districts is that because of technology limitations and the way that choice schools are designated in the database, WISE- can't pull in choice schools and show them this data right now. It's something that is being looked at, but right now, unfortunately, the tool is only available to public districts and independent charter schools. WISE- is color-coded. So when you're looking at a dashboard that has a green background, you're looking at current data that was submitted as of the previous day. And when you're looking at a slideshow that's shaded in purple, it is data that was captured in the last snapshot. You can also review your agency contacts from the WISEadmin portal. So for the applications like WISE Staff, WISE ID, and WISE Data Portal, if the people that are listed on that are wrong, then you can make sure that those get corrected. And the local data sharing agreement for local assessments is available for PALS and MAP, and that can be signed up for. You only have to do it once. So if your district has already done it, then you don't need to do it, every year or anything like that. But that is available right from that tool, except for the STAR local assessment. They won't let us do that way. So they have their own process. I believe it's called Renaissance. And there's a link to that process here in the slide if you use that assessment and would like to have that data available for you in WISE-. What is a data errata letter, Jeff? Well, when we take the data snapshot, like that biggie December snapshot that I mentioned, that data is final. It'll get reported that way. It'll get sent to the federal government in some cases, whatever the case may be. That data is what will be used. But sometimes LEAs find out later that unfortunately the data was wrong at the time of snapshot. So we have a data errata letter that could be sent. It doesn't change the data in the database. That stays the same. But it is posted on the DPI website so that anyone from the general public, for example, who is going out to look at the data in the WISE- public portal maybe, or on maybe some other pages, can hyperlink to that letter and see that the data was accidentally reported wrong in the snapshot, and they can see what the correct totals should be. It's important, though, that we never send PII in those letters because they are posted publicly, and it's so important that I actually put it on the slide twice. Uh, not on purpose, but it is important. So just make sure that no publicly identifiable information is included in those data errata letters. And hopefully, right, fingers crossed, you don't need to send one in the first place. But we all know that things happen, right? If DPI receives information that there is a cyber-related incident that school districts or choice schools or independent charter schools need to be made aware of, we will put that information in the WISEdata portal under the cyber incidents section. And this is an example of one that we had received from the FBI a couple of years ago. We're going to talk about some other WISEdata topics. Data teams we'll talk about briefly. Now, depending on the size of your agency, there may be pros and cons to having data teams, but we think that there are many more pros than there are cons. And what we mean by a data team is have subject matter experts who know the data, look at that data and verify it before the snapshot so that we can be sure that the data is correct at the time of the snapshot, and then we don't have to do that data errata thing. So for some districts that are large, maybe this would be a team of several people. But for some districts or schools that are smaller, maybe it would just be 2 or 3 people. But it's important to get those subject matter experts that know that data looking at it and verifying it before the snapshot so that we can make sure that the data is in a good state, is in a good quality state when we take that snapshot. And that's what we mean by a data team. We also want to talk quickly about data privacy, just quickly because we don't have a lot of time, not because it's not important, because it's very important. And at DPI, we are very concerned with making sure that private data stays private. And we have some links on this slide that you can use to review that information and make sure that you're following those practices. There are some great sessions at this conference as well about data privacy that I highly recommend that people attend. They're really good sessions. I think you'll really enjoy them as well as get the information from them. We also have a web page that's dedicated to new district administrators, and it basically tells you all the things that are related to WISE that you need to know to be a new district administrator. And it goes even beyond that and talks about some of the other things that are kind of out of the scope of WISE. So just wanted to make sure that it was known that that page exists and that you can look at that anytime you would like. We have a corresponding page then for principals and choice administrators that is full of resources that you may need to know, from licensing and principal eval rubric training to choice administrator training and accessing the OAS system and things like that. So wanted to make sure that you knew that those resources were available. And speaking of resources, we have very handily put at the end of this slide deck links to various resources on the DPI website that you hopefully will find helpful. The most of them here are ones that we have talked about already in the presentation. And there are so many of them that we include them on a second page. Some of them we haven't talked about yet, so I'll talk about them briefly. Data elements pages. Now, these are going to be more helpful probably for the people that are actually doing the WISEdata work, but they are also helpful for administrators, particularly if you would happen to get a question maybe from someone that's doing the work. We have knowledge-based articles, which which give tons of information about the different errors and warnings that we have in the WISEdata portal system, as well as WISE staff system. And also we have a knowledge base article for every mass email that we send out related to WISE. So if an email was sent out about the new school directory app being released, you can go into the knowledge base articles portal and pull up that email and look at it later, just if you accidentally deleted it, or maybe for some reason didn't receive it. That WISE events calendar that I mentioned is linked here as well. thank you for everything that you do. We really do appreciate that. Data reporting is not everyone's favorite thing, right? And we try to make it as easy as we can make it. And if there are things that we could do better, please let us know. We really do value your feedback. Don't only give us feedback on this conference, which we really want as well, but feedback on the WISE products, on the different processes, things like that. Some things, our hands are tied because there may be a state law or a federal law that regulates it, but some things we can improve. And we really do make improvements to the applications like WISE Data Portal and WISE ID and WISE Staff, for example, based on user feedback. And in most of those apps, there's a little widget down in the right-hand corner. You click on that widget, you get taken to a feedback page where you can either leave your own feedback, or vote on the suggestions that were made by other people. And we really do take that seriously, and we really have made enhancements to the systems based on that feedback. So I will now entertain questions if anyone has them. Yes.
So every year we do opt in to have the immunization information like imported or whatever, but it seems like every year we have a delay with that information. Do you know what would be possibly causing this?
So the question is, every year they opt into the immunization registration feature, and every year there seems to be delays or problems with it. And is there anything they can do to avoid that? Short answer, no. Long answer is there always seems to be something going on with that. Oftentimes it's related to a specific vendor, but more often than not, it's related to the Department of Health Services, which is who DPI partners with to work on that information. And a lot of effort is put into making sure that our database matches their database and that they can talk to each other and things like that. And when those avenues of communication break down, then a lot of times that's what the problem is. So we just patient. We ask you to be patient as we work through it, because the technical people really do work hard to get it right on both agency sides. But a lot of times there's some sort of weird technical problem where the two systems aren't talking to each other, and that's usually the problem. Sometimes it's a vendor issue, but more often than not, it's a problem between DHS and DPI.
So then it's best to put in a health ticket, because we usually try
Yes.
to leave that deadline, to have our information submitted.
And yes, it would be best to put in a help ticket, and we can either tell you the status of what's going on, or maybe that is the initial report of the problem and we can get started working on it. So yes, help ticket would be wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, we got one in the back. We'll have our mic runner, Carrie, run back there so we can let everybody hear the question.
Yeah. They always say you have to sign up with your school district email address. So I guess is the resources page where we would go for more information on how to set that up?
You go into the, let's see if I can do this.
And then my secondary question is, put in multiple domains, because we have charter schools that have their own email accounts, that as long as that's their school account.
Yes, you can use multiple domains. I'm back in our test system with our pretend data. Let's see if it actually comes up for me. And I'll show you what the screen looks like. You do that within the WISEsecure application, and it pertains only to the WISEsecure system. So the managing of email domains isn't going to work for, other areas of DPI. It's only going to work within WISEsecure. But I'll take a giant step backward and go back to WAMS IDs and say that when personnel require licensure, they are encouraged to have a WAMS ID that contains their personal email, because if they change districts or change schools or what have you, that would still be a means of communicating with them. But for the purposes of WISE, we want them to create a new WAMS ID that's associated with their school email address, because of security. We want to make sure that communications and things that are going out related to WISE are going out to, a school email address. We can't really stop you from doing that. So if your school has gmail.com as your email domain, that's okay. You know, we're not gonna like, you know, police you or anything on that, but it is suggested that those be done. And here, oh, good, it came up. Here's the screen. You can put the email domain in there and click add, and you can indicate that that is for, well, I don't know if the WISEID side of it is working or not. That might just be in the test, but so that's what the screen looks like. And yes, you can add multiple ones as well. You'd want to do it for WAMs. I'm not even sure if WISEID shows up in the production app. It might just be in the test version here. I'm not sure about that.
That time.
Yes.
So, hi, I'm here with, through the lens of district administrator, on this session. In the past, I was really more involved in the nitty gritty, technical data stuff. And now I'm trying to take a step back and just have the eagle-eye view over our, responsible handling of WISEdata stuff. So what I do is I go to WISEdata portal and I look at validation messages and I see the big red flags and we work on those. Is that where I should be as a district administrator?
That is wonderful because I don't know that a lot of administrators really have the time to do that. So the fact that you're doing that is great. No, that's fantastic because you can sort of direct traffic then. You can sort of say, oh, look, we have 6 critical errors in special ed that we need to fix these quickly. Yeah. And so, no, I think that's wonderful. And as hands-on as you want to be, like I said, the system is designed to be flexible. So as hands-on as you want to be is great. If you want to delegate all that to other people, it's set up that way as well. Anybody else? We have one over here. You got your running shoes on, Carrie?
Data elements, Excel spreadsheet to Infinite Campus, Skyward, Our School, whatever information systems everybody in the state uses. That then tells us what that data element is called and where it's located and which one is the special, important, really important one that has to be actually right to make all of the 600 errors go away. We do have that magical thing.
Well, now you're just being silly. No, we have been from day one of WISEdata, we have been working on that. We're not there yet, obviously. But we have a vendor relationship manager who works with the vendors all the time. And we're getting better and better as we go along. So there are vendors that have built tools similar to what you said. There are others that are not quite as far along the way. So I would suggest checking with your vendor and seeing what tools they have available. The problem is on the DPI side, we are not privileged to have proprietary information that the vendor doesn't want us to have. So it's hard for us to implement it from our end. So what we're trying to do is make it easier for them to implement it the other way into WISEdata. And that goes back to that feedback thing that I was talking about too. So if you have if you have ideas on ways that could be made easier, we would love to hear them. But yes, we've heard that from day one. And we have been, I think we're getting better every year at it, but we're not there yet. I will admit that, but we're really trying, really trying. Question was, were you talking about the transmission of the data or the interpretation of it?
On our student information system so that by tomorrow it's all clean and pretty again, or we get it to be clean and pretty. So whatever side that is.
Yeah, there's some of the interpretation of what those errors are coming.
Probably yes, that too.
All right, I think we're at time. So being respectful of everyone's time, we're going to end the session now. But if you do have other questions or other ideas or things you want to bring up, let us know. Find one of us in the lovely blue shirts and we'll be happy to help you. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Please be aware we have labs for WISEdata and WISE in the Banyan room, and we also have a WISE.
Nice doing the presentation. I'm gonna ask you a question. I didn't want to ask it as a whole because it didn't come up with it impacted, maybe it impacted. We had this situation ever since I've been doing this where we have students who have to be in the wrong building because of special ed. Their age doesn't match the age of the building. Is there any way that there could just be a simple checkbox or something that could be checked indicating the student is in the wrong building because of COVID? Because right now we have to jump through all these hoops to try and make Skyward pretend they're in this building, but not really in that building, over here, over there. Totally. And I think other districts encounter that, but.
Now, I'm not a Skyward expert, but it's my understanding they do have some sort of way to do that.
It is, but it's so convoluted that we can never get the errors to truly go away.
Okay.
Because you have to say, well, they're in this school, but they're in this entity. And you have to, kind of cross things over. It seems like it would be so simple to just have something in the programming of live that just interpret. This part of the chat. It means that is for the right reason. Is that making sense?
Yeah, make it down. So if we could have Skyward send, I'm understanding this right. Let's say we have Skyward send, but there's two. Like school, ABC school, XYZ. And then you get to check which one is, the school, the age appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's Johnny. He's 6 years old, but because our programming is in, he's in the wrong age.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if there were a way for the system to say, check this box, and it will send data saying, yeah, he's in the wrong school, but this is the reason, special or something like that. Okay, so I don't know. I mean,
And it may be. Maybe more on the side and the wise of the end. But we'll leave it up to our wise data team. And of course, I like the programming stuff and there's right away, whether that's. But even if I don't. But no, you're not in that.
okay.
And I think it was, very, wonder about how. And I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Not,
Yeah. In Skyward's mind, it's a piece of cake. But in the fool's mind, it's just really.
I remember this coming out before and it's a federal rule. Federal for it.
Yeah.
So that can't be that, we can't find it. From that side of things, but maybe.
Like,
It's a good idea. The worst they can do is say no.
yeah, right, yeah. And I almost wanted to ask a question and say, Jeff, you did such a fine job in your presentation. Where did you graduate from high school? A little self-promotion.
I owe it all to you. I sat there, I out of my shell. Were you ever in, I was. Wow, that's a very good. Thank you. Very well.
We'll give it to you.
All right, I'll get out of your hair, sorry.
Not even a presenter.
Well, then,
I certainly can't give this presentation.
The good news is that the technology worked nearly flawlessly, so I'm assuming that'll carry over.
Black in my classroom, but, one point, just, it's weird, like, I broke the rules. I downloaded my PowerPoint because I wanted it to move, it was lab, so I wanted to make my slides. They did it for a while, it just, I don't think it was the projector. Something went whack.
I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but I liked Google. But yeah, but. It worked. So. So they got using it. So I'm gonna, yeah. Totally understand.
Maybe, well, maybe hearing correct could have like a sound. No. I don't know.
That one. So, and then, who knows the year after that, so it's all, it's all.
Well, you gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you can't just be picking and choosing, you kind of have to just pick a little bitter, right?
oh, I just even, offering up. Yeah. I mean, we're not so much on what we can offer,
Oh, it's Rob. They're no good.
Walking by, seeing some of the lavish spreads that some of these other, or even.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, well, and they probably.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
And like, I don't know, you guys can't really do that, so you need to try. I don't know.
Yeah, the best we can do is, I think somebody offered to buy coffee. As well. That was huge for us.
And even then, you have to be careful with that. Certain vendors or sponsors. You know what I mean? It kind of gives you, somebody could complain, give you. Giving your vendor, and then it gets political, and then it's all.
The number of people and things that and stuff not to go through. And all we want to do is
I know,
make it an enjoyable.
people understand. This in hearing, but also. What you see. Having, when they go to other countries.
Oh, I never left meeting. Whoops.
Okay.
Oh, these are the two kids that are.
Yeah.